So you've been through the preliminary process of applying to Oxford, submitting your UCAS application, sitting the MAT, and getting invited to an interview. Well, congratulations. Getting invited to an interview at Oxford is a considerable achievement in its own right. The thought of being assessed by some of the world's most acclaimed academics might seem scary. However, as all applicants learn, after the interview, it's not as scary as it first seems. Here are our top tips that will help you get a better understanding of the interview process for the 2022 admissions cycle. Starting with tip number 1, check the interview arrangements. Almost all of Oxford interviews in 2022 are likely to be held online. Along with your interview invitation, you should get added to a Microsoft Teams meeting. You'll also receive instructions about necessary equipment for the interview. In the interview, you'll be expected to use a touchscreen device to write on a virtual whiteboard. Oxford primarily uses Miro for this purpose. You should try out the logistics well in advance so that you don't find that your equipment is not working properly right before the interview. Tip number 2, become familiar with the interview process. Just because Oxford University interviews are different from those at other universities doesn't necessarily mean that you have to guess what yours could be like. The universities, not to mention specific colleges, provide plenty of information about how they like to assess their applicants, and you can even watch mock interviews for free on YouTube. Additionally, there are numerous sources of interview questions that previous applicants have been asked. You can find these on forums and on the Oxbridge Mind website. Tip number 3, don't cram before the interview. Given that the interview will likely be asking you maths questions, you might think that cramming everything that you learned through the A-levels syllabus before the interview might be worth it. But don't let this fool you. In fact, Oxford Maths interviewers aren't designed to try and see how many facts and theorems that you can remember about the subject. What they are most interested in is assessing your thought processes and problem-solving skills. Most interview questions will therefore be on topics that you haven't necessarily seen before, but which can be approached with an A-level maths knowledge. So instead of revising everything that you could possibly know about your school syllabus, going over several sample interview questions will better familiarise yourself with the interview. A top tip from our Oxford maths experts is to practice maths Olympiad questions, as you can expect these to be mimicked in the 2022 Oxford maths interview. Tip number 4, practice thinking out loud. In the interview, you'll be given one question at a time, and the interviewers will ask you to think out loud, so as to get a better understanding of your thought process. Well, since they're more interested in assessing your approach to a problem, it's crucial that you explain every step in your solution. This can seem a bit scary at first, but with practice you can perfect your verbal problem-solving skills. To develop your skills, you can maybe work on past MAT questions or past interview questions with another friend. Alternatively, you can try explaining solutions to questions to someone who maybe hasn't come across the topic before, or maybe sit mock interviews with some of your school tutors. Even helping a sibling or friend with their homework can help you develop your ability to explain complicated concepts quickly and clearly. Tip number 5, don't forget your usual preparation. One of the unique things about the Oxford Maths interview is that they tend to ignore those staple interview questions asked by other universities. Questions about why you chose maths or why their specific university, as well as questions on your personal statement, work experience, or personal traits. For the vast majority of interviewees, none of these will come up, but that's not to say that you shouldn't tempt fate and ignore them entirely in your preparation. So before the interview, it's worth looking at your personal statement to see what you wrote and what you think about how you might expand on some of the topics if you're asked to. Tip number 6, don't be afraid to ask questions. Remember that the tutors don't expect you to be an expert in the subject that you're applying to. Rather, they want to see your enthusiasm in the subject and assess your abilities to overcome challenges. The questions they ask reflect this philosophy, and there's a high chance that you'll get stuck somewhere during the interview. If you tried every possible approach that came to your mind, it's okay to tell your tutors that you're stuck. They are typically more than happy to give you a hint. Of course, you shouldn't expect them to spoon feed you the answer, but often they are likely to point you in the right direction. So think of the interview as a learning experience and don't be afraid to ask questions. Tip number 7, get suitable interview practice. To get a proper feeling for the 2022 virtual interviews, you should try to organise a mock interview that imitates the Oxford interviewer's style. You can do this perhaps with anyone that you know who studied mathematics or computer science at Oxford or Cambridge. If you don't know, as will be the case for most people, you can ask a teacher at your school to try and replicate the interview experience for you. You can also check out our service at MedicMind and Oxbridge Mind, as most of our maths students at MedicMind are current undergraduate students at Oxford University. As always, you can practice by yourself as well. We suggest recording yourself on Zoom whilst you reflect and answer your past paper questions out loud, and then watch these recordings back to self-critique your approach. Tip number 8, don't worry about any missed questions. As we previously mentioned, not being able to solve a single problem most likely won't break your application. As well, don't overanalyse what you said in your interview afterwards. It's often the case that applicants think that they did worse in their interview than the interviewers thought. Some interviewers might ask you if you have any questions for them at the end of the interview. You shouldn't necessarily stress about this. If you have a question, great, and if you're genuinely curious about any of the topics that came up during the interview, or if you're interested maybe in any of the tutor's research, then you should feel free to ask it. Before the interview, you could do a bit of research, therefore, on your interviewers to reflect on their specific interests. Finally, relax and enjoy the conversation. Despite the stress of the university admissions process, interviews are a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to have a conversation about something that you're passionate about with world-class experts. So enjoy the conversation and have fun solving some good maths problems. So there you go. The beans have been spilled. Prepare well for the interview, get a good night's sleep, and therefore, good luck. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to unlock the rest of the course, which includes over 1,000 MAT questions, 20 hours of tutorials, and work solutions to all past papers, click the link in the description below.